Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty show. And today we're going to throw you a buy hold show. That's right. No sells here. We're buying and holding these players after week 2 and leading into week 3 of the season. We have got Matt English in the house today to fire away and lead us into it. Hey, my Bucks won a big one in Detroit. Matt, your Texans pulled it off on Sunday night against a pesky little Chicago Bears team. How are you doing, Matt?
Doing good, man. Glad to be back in the birdhouse. And so I've got some ideas for the Texans offense, but I'm not an offensive coordinator. I'm just I'm an armchair quarterback who's got some ideas. Would they work?
Hey.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's all we can hope for, right? We'll do the analysis for you, and we're going to fire away with a few buys and holds for you. We're going to start off with the gentleman who had to go against my Buccaneers defense, and that would be Jared Goff. So let's bring him out onto the stage here. Let me figure out how to share this. There we go. All right, here's Jared Goff. And so last week, he fired away 55 pass attempts. Boy, Ben Johnson did not want to run the ball against the Buccaneers defense. Should have probably made that adjustment when Vita Vea went out, but hey, I'm not an offensive coordinator either. So there it is, Jared Goff, 34 of 55, 307 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks, though. That is the scary thing for Goff. Are we scared off by Goff's performance against Tampa, or is it still a little too early to be panicking, Matt? What are you thinking on Mr. Goff here?
I think it's a little early. I mean, look here. We know this can be a very fantasy friendly offense to the running backs, to the tight end, to the wide receiver, and to the quarterback in Jared Goff. That being said, and you and I've talked about this a lot, we're short a preseason game. The OTAs, the rookie mini camps, the practices, they're all shortened. Everything's shortened. So when we start our seasons now, yes, we have a longer season, but the beginning of the season also is very, preseason-ish the first couple of weeks anyway. And so they're still working out a lot of kinks. We've seen this across the league, and that tight ends have been almost a non-factor. The top tight ends have been, and that's one of Jared Goff's top targets in tight end Samuel Laporta. So in week 1, we saw no Amon-Ra, not really. We saw no Sam Laporta, and then we're looking at like a third option. Maybe you could call him a fourth option if you take out Gibbs as a pass-catching option, was Jameson Williams, who emerged and showed what everybody had been hoping for in fantasy. But then in this past week, you did see Amon-Ra get heavily targeted. Laporta was still missing in the equation. So you're still seeing a lot of things work themselves out. I know the numbers aren't great here. The good news is, chances are you didn't spend super high draft capital, especially in one quarterback leagues for Jared Goff. In a super flex, you may have, but it's still a hold. And if I need a quarterback, he is absolutely a buy low target for me. I would love to get my hands on Jared Goff at his price point now than I would have 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, man, I totally agree with you on Goff here. The Lions, it was obvious to me that they were just geared up to throw this game. And Ben Johnson decided not to make some kind of adjustment in his play calling to run the ball more. I don't know if that means he was looking for Goff to get more rush attempts by changing the play at the line or what, but it definitely was not that Montgomery or Gibbs were ineffective. They looked strong. I mean, Gibbs almost busted it down the sideline at the end there on the Bucs' first goal line stand under 5 minutes left in the game. And he would have gotten a touchdown there down the sideline, but one of the defensive backs just knocked him out of bounds slightly. So Gibbs and Montgomery definitely looking strong going forward. The Lions offensive line is what we thought they were. They allowed no sacks to the Bucs defense. I think it was just Todd Bowles and his defensive back scheme that he had going on that confused Goff a little. You can see here he had 2 interceptions. The Bucs defense actually dropped 2 more interceptions, so it could have even been worse for Goff. But I think it just had to do with a little bit of a defensive scheme thing from Bowles and confusing him a little. And then, on top of it, the game flow just was a really weird game watching. Like, it seemed like both teams should have scored more, but they just couldn't punch it in. Once they got inside the 20, both defenses really, tightened up. And one of the Buccaneers touchdowns was just off of 2 Baker Mayfield scrambles, literally. And so it was kind of an ugly game, but obviously for me, I enjoyed the outcome. But for Goff, if you lost Tua or are struggling at quarterback and need a second guy, if it's a dynasty league, definitely go out and get him. I'm not afraid to go get Goff. That offensive line is awesome. He did hit Amon-Ra for 11 catches. I think it was 11 catches for 119 yards. So they're back on the same page. As long as Amon-Ra is back in the lineup this week, because he did get a knee injury there at the very end of the game. But I think he'll be back. All signs are pointing towards him playing this week. At least it's not a hamstring injury, because we know how those go. Those can last 2 to 3 weeks. So I think that Amon-Ra should be fine going forward. If not, he's definitely got some chemistry going with JMO now. And like you said, the tight end landscape just in general across the league has not performed up until this point this year. And I would definitely be looking at any of the higher end tight ends, because they haven't performed yet, but they will start soon. So that's where we're at on Goff. Next up, we've got another quarterback we want to dive into, and that guy would be from Seattle, and his name would be Geno Smith, who lit it up this last week. And man, I was excited about the Seattle offense coming into this season. This year against a pretty solid defensive team with New England. I was very happy from what I saw, especially with the targets to the top 2 options there. What are you thinking, Matt, with Geno? Is it real?
Yeah. Look, I went ahead and picked him up where I could last week. Especially in my redraft leagues. I'm not a big fan of holding a backup quarterback, just not. That being said, when Geno was available, I had to grab him where I could, just because if you watch the tape from the week 1 performance, the first half wasn't much to really be excited about. But when you watch that second half and you watch the way the defense flies around the ball and the way they're ready to make plays, the way the offense started moving, and then you look at the way Geno did play. What he had, like 44 attempts. He completed over 75% of his passes. JSN had the week that everybody for the last, 18 months has been waiting for. And he got DK a big week too. So we know Geno's capable of supporting 2 fantasy receivers game to game, and he's available on a lot of waiver wires. So I want to get him. And if I have him, it wasn't a huge fantasy week, but he was going up against a really good defense, and so I'm glad I already have him in a couple of leagues. If I didn't, he was available. I'd like to have him. And if I'm in a super flex or 2 quarterback league, I'm absolutely looking to get some shares of Geno.
Yeah, I think Geno is definitely one of my favorite guys to own in best ball formats. As a 3rd or 4th quarterback, I like to try and get 4 quarterbacks if I can in best ball. and just to play the variance, honestly, have one stud quarterback and then 2 or 3 middle of the road guys, and hope one of them gets you to 20 points. And Gino obviously did that this week. We talked this offseason a lot about the new offense in Seattle and whether or not that new offense would light up the scoreboard or at least throw a lot. And they did this week. 44 pass attempts, 30 of those went to JSN and DK, which is exactly what we want to see. 16 targets for JSN this week. Gotta love that, right, Matt? I know you're a big JSN guy.
Yeah.
So I'm a big DK guy, so I had no problem with it. And so, yeah, we're definitely hoping this continues. Some of it may have had to do with Kenneth Walker's injury as well. But Zach Charbonnet did what he needed to do on the ground. Maybe we'll get a little bit more this week from Charbonnet. The Seahawks, let me check it out. I'm not sure who they got this week off the top of my head. They are playing, let's see here. They get the Dolphins at home. So we got a banged up Dolphins squad rolling into Seattle, and with Skylar Thompson, it's not exactly a great matchup for them. We should see the Seahawks. You would think you'd see the Seahawks light it up early on the Dolphins, maybe similar to what happened with them with the Dolphins in the Buffalo game. Could be another nightmare week for them. But go out and get Gino, see what you can get for him. He still should not be that expensive. Unless the team you're trying to trade with absolutely needs Gino, they're going to hang on to him. But if Gino's expendable, I would definitely go out and look to acquire him. So next up, we're going to roll into the wide receiver position and talk about your boy from Houston. That would be Tank Dell, Matt. What are your thoughts after Sunday night's performance where Tank, as you can see there, only had 4 targets, just had the 1 grab for a negative output there. What are your thoughts on Tank Dell so far and what you've seen from this Texans offense?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to go back to what I said initially in that the season's just getting started. We have shorter practices, less practice time, less preseason, but we do have a longer overall real deal season. So with the Tank Dell situation, I think if most people would sit here and look at Tank Dell's production, look at what he's done, look at the draft capital that's been spent, and he's headed to the bench for week 3. I think that would be foolish. I think that would be very foolish. I think that all of the video evidence is there on how CJ Stroud feels about Tank Dell. Okay. I think also he had a drop last week that would have been another 13 and change to 15 and change, depending on your league setup, added to his overall score. And then everyone would be okay, right? If he catches that 167-yard touchdown pass, or would have been, you're looking at a 15 to 17 point week or 16, 18 point week. You're okay with that. My point is most people are probably going to start throwing in the white towel on Tank Dell, and it's a great opportunity to go buy him low. He's still CJ Stroud's guy. He was 1 drop away from a decent week. I think week 3 is the week you see him go crazy. I just do.
Yeah, I agree with you here. From what I've seen from the Texans offense, I'm not scared off by Tank Dell's 1 bad game. And you could definitely look to exploit a Dell owner who was watching this game, which was on national TV. So obviously there were a lot of eyeballs on it. And maybe the Dell owner in your league scared off by Stephon Diggs' production so far. It's obvious Nico is the number 1 guy. And then to me, it's still Dell is going to end up being the second second best option here. I mean, the final stats, between Dell and Diggs, who knows how close they might end up. But, as you mentioned, Stroud loves this guy. And so he is going to continue to throw to him. I know he had a down week here, but yeah, definitely look for him to have a bounce back week at Minnesota next week. It's an okay matchup. Nothing terrible there. Vikings have looked pretty solid so far, but they're definitely exploitable. And so we'll see. I mean, Debo had a big week against them last week before getting hurt. And so we'll see with the Texans offense. It's going to be this way, I think, pretty much every week. You can't expect all three of them. That is in Dell, Diggs, and Nico. You can't expect all three of them to go off in 1 week. So it's going to be this way. I mean, who knows? Next week, Nico could have a bad showing just because the Vikings decide to roll coverage over his way, and then Stroud exploits Dell and Diggs next week. So we'll see.
If you're the Minnesota defense, why wouldn't you shut down the number one target getter and receiver on the team? The coverage focus should be on Nico Collins with an eye on Diggs. And if Slowick's worth, the Charmin extra soft he wipes his butt with, he's probably going to change up some formations and move some things around to have Dell and Diggs both running out of the slot at the same time. And you want to talk about getting these early defenses, which all defenses have been running at a high percentage of zone the first couple of weeks. A lot of that is going to start to change as we get into the season and the defenses figure out who they are. The zones have made things difficult for passing offenses to start with, but I think you are going to see some more teams shifting to man as they now start to figure out where targets are going, right? So, and that's going to create weeks like this where I think Tank Dell's this guy that gets the targets and the receptions, and everyone's going to be happy or upset if he's sitting on your bench.
Absolutely. Yes. All right. We're going to roll into another receiver who's sort of disappointed so far. He did get 4 for 81 in week 2 against the Cowboys, and that would be Chris Olave. And also note on that Olave on one of his grabs was basically a half yard short of a touchdown. So if you would make that 4 for 82 and a touchdown, you'd be pretty happy with Olave's performance so far, but unfortunately he didn't get that touchdown, and it added to Kamara's total, who went absolutely bonkers against the Cowboys. But back to Olave here, Matt. What are your thoughts on Olave? I mean, I'm sure some owners are definitely disappointed in him so far.
Yeah, he's a guy I want to get shares of right now because you're not going to find him cheaper than we have over the last year or so. Chris Olave is still an elite talent. I mean, he was drafted in dynasty startups, second, third round this year. And in redraft leagues, I mean, depending on how your league drafts, third, fourth round. It's high draft capital. And the numbers are coming. I just feel like everything you're seeing is kind of a farce. The run game has been super successful. The offense has been super efficient, and it's just not – I don't see that efficiency carrying over the length of a 17-game season or an 18-week season, whatever you want to call it. So I just don't see it lasting all of that. Olave's targets will increase. So will his production as a result. He's absolutely a buy low candidate. I've talked to several people this week about potential trades involving getting Chris Olave, and I would go get him. I would go get him immediately.
Yeah, Matt, you mentioned the efficiency of the Saints offense so far. And I mean, obviously Rashid Shaheed has been the poster boy of that so far, with 2 touchdowns over 60 yards this season already. And now obviously that's not going to carry over every single week. So you're going to see some sort of regression. But that said, with Clint Kubiak coming over, he had been with the Niners the last few years. And so that offense, I mean, Derek Carr is running that 49ers offense to a T right now. And so that's what they're looking to do. They're going to have sort of a lesser pass volume, and be more, they're using more motion. So there's less total plays, but more effective plays. And obviously this explosion from the Saints has surprised probably 95% of the country so far, and myself included. And so, I mean, when you come to Derek Carr and Rashid Shaheed and even Kamara, I mean, are they buy highs, or are
all
they
three of them
sell highs right now? Because
Olave,
I do believe in buying.
Totally buying Olave. Sorry, I'm choking over my own saliva here trying to get it out. Yeah, I'm still selling. Who would have thought starting the season we'd be in week 3 here, and I would say you're selling high on Saints players. That's kind of nuts. But yeah, you can sell high on Derek Carr, you can sell high on Alvin Kamara, you can sell high on Rashid Shaheed. And if you picked him up off waivers last week, what a heck of a way to just pop your investment right out the gates and sell high. I would, because it's just not something that is going to be repeatable for the rest of the season. It's just not. It will not be. And if I'm wrong on this, man, the Saints will probably get a Super Bowl.
Now that would be wild. I mean, Derek Carr, as you mentioned pre-show, he does pop off in every election year. So that's right, what we have going on so far. But they do get the Eagles this week. It is in the Dome at home, so that benefits the Saints. They're favored by 3, but Philly is a legit team. This one is gonna be interesting. It'll show whether the Saints are for real or not. But as far as Olave goes, go out there and kick the tires on what he'll cost you right now, because he's definitely somebody that will start to improve. Next up, we've got a 49er, and with all of their injuries, Brandon Ayuk hasn't done so much this season. Now, he had that contract situation, obviously, all off season that lasted right up past the 3rd preseason game, right up to the final week before the season. So you can understand where he hasn't been exactly on the same page with Brock Purdy. I remember the Monday night game, he dropped a touchdown that, had he been in midseason form, which Peyton Manning made ever so apparent, calling him out for not being in camp, that he would have caught that had he done the reps. So you can definitely see that Ayuk still has the talent. He's getting open. The opportunities are going to be there in this uber efficient 49ers offense. And now you have the injury to Deebo Samuel. Yeah. So I think that's the key. But what are your thoughts, Matt?
I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, do we really think these numbers hold for Brandon Ayuk? And I seriously doubt it. And then you throw in now the Deebo Samuel injury. I mean, targets have to shift his way. They just have to. Who else is going to do it?
Right. I mean, it's been shown that Jordan Mason is definitely not the receiving back that Christian McCaffrey is. So you eliminate those targets that would have normally gone to McCaffrey, and then you take Deebo Samuel out of the picture. Not only his targets, but his 2 or 3 rushing attempts that he would get during a regular game for the Niners. So, I mean, it's going to be the George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk show going forward this week. I mean, Juwan Jennings is a decent receiver. He's shown that he can fill in, and that's what he's going to have to do for the next probably 2 to 3 weeks here with Deebo and his calf strain. Unless it is as bad as McCaffrey's, but they haven't put Deebo on IR. So I don't think that it's to that level. yet, at least. And so Debo should be back in a couple weeks. But yeah, in the meantime, yeah, you got to believe Brandon Ayuk's getting at least 8 to 10 targets this week when they face the LA Rams, who just got obliterated by the Cardinals this last week. Marvin Harrison showing up. And so we're back excited for Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison. All right, next up, we've got another guy who's been disappointing, and pretty much their whole team's been disappointing, but they did pull out a victory in Jacksonville, and that would be the Cleveland Browns and Amari Cooper. And so what are you thinking with Cooper and his quarterback struggling? What are you thinking here with Amari? Is he a buy, a hold? I'm not selling him. So what do you think with Amari?
Yeah, he's one that kind of falls in that I can't sell him. I've got too much into him, or I can't just drop him. But I also can't sell him because no one really wants to buy him. So I'm going to probably hold him in hopes that seeing Deshaun Watson improve over the course of week 2, over the course of the game in week 2, things started to click better. They started to move either which way. Deshaun Watson looked better as the game went on in week 2. I think that gives a little bit of hope to Amari Cooper owners and the investment that they have in him. So, again, I look at him as a name that's probably slipped way down, that his current owners either don't have a lot of like for at this point, or they're kind of iffy about, and you can probably get a good buy low deal for him. But I will advise, if you are one of his owners, maybe just hold on for another week or two, especially if you're in best ball.
Yeah, Amari is a guy that if you owned him going into the season, generally speaking, you probably had him last season, right? And you knew what you had with Amari, and that's a solid veteran wide receiver that isn't worth an extreme amount on the in a dynasty aspect, but he's worth more to you than what you can get for him in the open market. And even with 2 poor performances to start, it's still the same situation. Like, Amari is still the number 1 wide receiver there, even with Judy there. And, Njoku was out last week, and I think he's still going to be out this week with his injury. So, it'll come. It's just a situation. Look at the target numbers, 9 targets and 8 targets. I mean, it's not like Watson isn't looking his way. They just have to get on the same page. And again, it just points back to the limited practice time, the limited preseason games. This really is the preseason right now. And so we can't really just be hard pressed on what's going to happen the rest of the year until we get to the end of September here. So Amari, yes, definitely go out and get him if you can for a second or 2/3 or whatever. If you're contending and you're not happy with one of your rookie wide receivers, go ahead and sell them for a nice solid veteran that can come into your lineup and be your 4th, 5th wide receiver. He's not going to be somebody that wins you the league, but at the same time, he is somebody who did put up 50 points in week 16 last year. So I know he got me to the championship in one of my leagues, and his talent is still there. He's still just a solid guy that shows up, and he'll be there for you, and he's going to get the targets. So yeah, go out and get Amari. One last receiver we want to talk about, that would be the Buccaneers, Chris Godwin. And Godwin has just been on fire this first 2 games. And last year, there were a couple of guys who, after the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, would have been worth buying high on. I'm talking about Puka Nacua, Tank Dell. A lot of people after the first 2 games were like, I'm not a believer. Well, Chris Godwin, to me, is somebody you target if you're looking to sell one of your elite players and tier down. I'm talking like, say you have like Saquon or Breece Hall or Bijan, and you want to tier down and just get a lesser running back, try and add in somebody like Chris Godwin. That's my thought on the deal. Godwin, you're not going to be able to buy straight up for a second rounder probably right now. He's playing too well, unless the guy is just looking to fire sale and rebuild completely. But what are your thoughts on Godwin so far, Matt?
Oh, I love Chris Godwin. I tried so hard to get shares of him in my Win Now dynasties, and in all of my redrafts. And I mean, I got a couple of shares, but not as many as I want. But everything I thought that he was going to do this year, it's been that and more. So I'm super happy to have him. And like you said, it's going to be really tough to get an owner off of Godwin right now, unless you pay for it.
Right. You're going to have to pay for it, but
unless
I think
you're
it's
doing
going
a
to be
scenario
worth
like where you say you're tearing down, so you're getting Godwin as part of the deal, along with either a younger or less productive asset at running back. Yeah, sure, that will work. But trying to get him straight up for another receiver or for draft capital, that's going to get expensive.
Yeah, I'm talking like trying something like, say you have Saquon and you want to sell high on how he's looked so far. You down tier to like a Josh Jacobs and try and get him to throw in Chris Godwin or some other middling running back that you trust, like Rashad White or something like that. I mean, Rashad White's a whole nother story because Bucky Irving's been playing pretty well, but I still see the passing volume going to Rashad White. But if we move on to some of the other running backs, let's start off in Cincinnati with Chase Brown. Chase was, of course, in that big Kansas City Bengals game that we had. That was the nationwide game that everybody saw. And most of us are complaining about the officials again because it was a Chiefs win based off of a penalty at the end. But we've kind of grown accustomed to that. So you got to kind of almost expect it. But
have we though?
Have we
though? I'm never accustomed to officials owning the game ever. And this is something that carried true for a couple of years for sure that I've tracked it. And look, yeah, was it pass interference? Absolutely it was. But what about the holding call? What about the holding call right before he released that pass where there was clear and obvious holding? Didn't flag that. So
absolutely. I saw it too.
Flag. Yeah. And I'm just it's bad, man. We all know there's a design to the season, but that it's very bad. It's very bad. I'll just say that. It's a bad look.
Yeah, I mean, I was texting my friend that's a Bengals fan during the game, and as we headed into the fourth quarter, I'm like, man, you guys are looking good so far. All I want is to not have this game end on a penalty that gives the Chiefs the win. And call me Nostradamus, but I guess you could say that for pretty much every Chiefs game that's on national TV now. Mm-hmm. But back to Chase Brown here, just four carries, did get 31 yards on those 4 carries. And not much production week 1 either. What are we thinking with Chase Brown? I mean, Zach Moss is seemingly the goal line guy here, so he's going to get the short touchdowns. This Bengals team has started off slow, but if you've looked at it, 5 out of the last 6 years, this Bengals team started out 0-2. So September is pretty much their preseason every year. So what are we thinking with Chase Brown here, Matt?
Yeah, you killed it there. The Bengals team is not known for its play in September. And so, look, I own Chase Brown in a couple of leagues too. I'm very high on his efficiency, which we can see here. Even if you average out the 2 weeks, he's still over 5.5 yards a carry, given smaller sample size. And we didn't see any passing involvement in week 2, which maybe would have been beneficial for them. Probably. He's very explosive. Much like Chase Brown reminds me of kind of like an A-chain type explosive player. Cincinnati just hasn't used him in that manner, which at some point, they're going to because they know what they have. He's a hold. He's an absolute hold. If you want to take a chance and try to get him at a low cost, go for it. Chances are he's probably been dropped at this point and available on waivers for free. But yeah, he's a hold. Just wait, especially if you're in best ball. He's not hurt. He's not putting up goose eggs for you. Just give him a chance. Be patient. The numbers will come. You might have to wait a couple weeks till we get to October to get out of this September Cincinnati funk that seems to just cloud over the organization. That being said, he's a hold for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is another opportunity to exploit an owner that's disappointed, or maybe they just were able to, pick up other running backs off of waivers. So they have so much depth at running back that they're able to, get rid of Chase Brown and it won't hurt their team at all. So you get a win-win type of trade. And so we were all pretty excited about Chase Brown heading into this season and his potential. And I think you hit it there, Matt, in that he's got that A-chain type explosiveness. Not quite maybe to that level of A-chain, but the explosiveness is definitely there. And you could definitely expect the Bengals to be working on ways to get this man the ball going forward into the next few weeks here. The Bengals this week coming up, they are matched up with let's see, who do they got? They are on Monday night, and this could be a good get-well game for them against the Commanders, who have just an atrocious pass defense. So you could look for them to exploit the Commanders' defense there through the air. Next up, we're going to head over to New York and look into Braylon Allen, who just exploded onto the scene this past week against the Tennessee Titans. You could call it what you want, but he basically stole a couple touchdowns here. One from Breece Hall, had another one through the air. So it's pretty much a surprising game here from Braylon Allen for sure. I guess the amount of touches, what did he have here? He had 7 rushing attempts and 2 catches. So that's 9 touches, 4 targets out of the backfield. That's a little surprising for sure. We weren't expecting much through the air from Braylon Allen, but ultimately, to me, he's the top handcuff in the league right now. What are you thinking, Matt?
Yeah, if you were lucky enough to grab him off of waivers or win out the bidding war to get him, good for you. I think we all know. So if you drafted Breece Hall as a rookie, some of the injuries that come along with, or have experienced the pain that come along with owning that. So you want to have him for that. I know, and Hall's a little banged up after this second week of play, so there's a little bang up there. But I think we've seen that Braylon Allen is going to be involved with this offense, regardless of the health of Breece Hall. Look at the snap share increase from week 1 to week 2. It almost doubled, 18 to 35 snaps. So it almost doubled. And then if you look at his touches, he went from one carry to 7, and then 1 target to 4. But he caught half of them, and it's hyper efficient that he happened to score touchdowns in those limited 9 touches. But I think you're going to see his snap share continue to increase. I think he's earning it, right? And the snaps, the touches, those aren't given; they are absolutely earned. And if his are increasing at this rate, he's a guy I want to have shares of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how scared are you with Breece Hall here? With Braylon Allen jumping up to a 35% snap share. So you got a 65-35 split. I mean, Breece Hall is somebody who many were touting as the RB1 for this season, somebody who could replace McCaffrey as the RB1. Do you think Breece could still get that, considering, let's just say they both stay healthy all season? You think Breece could still get the RB1, based on how the other running backs have been performing and what this Jets offense looks like so far?
I mean, sure, it's possible. I see him as an RB1, not the RB1, but as an RB1, even with the emergence of Braylon Allen. I mean, I think if we looked at our going into our rookie drafts, how we felt about Braylon Allen being the build that he is, 6'1", 235 pounds, or over 220 pounds. That's all that matters to me. Once they get to 5'11", right? Be over 220. He clearly is, and he's a big kid, man. And playing the running back position, I like him anyway. I didn't think that we would see this many snaps for him early without injury. And yeah, I'd be a little nervous if I was Breece Hall's owner, but not to the point where I'm trying to get out from underneath him.
Yeah, I mean, with Braylon Allen's size, he's definitely the perfect complement to a Breece Hall type running back. So with Breece Hall, which running backs, let's put it this way, which running backs in redraft would you take over Breece Hall at this point? Would you take Saquon or Breece Hall?
Breece Hall.
You'd still take Breece over Saquon? Yeah. Okay, I think that's like the perfect example because I mean, Bijan and Breece are also kind of in a similar situation. Bijan's got Tyler Algier behind him, a decent running back as well in his own right. So Bijan and Breece, I was always leaning slightly to Bijan, just mostly, I guess, because of their build. I saw Bijan as somebody who could hold up a little better, and we've seen Breece break down a little bit in his first couple seasons. But I don't know that there's many other backs other than Saquon that you can argue, over Breece Hall still. So I wouldn't be scared of Breece Hall's numbers.
Well, Bijan one, it looks like there's less of a split now, being away from Arthur Smith's system. Looks like it's more Bijan than a split. I'm
curious. I'm going to bring up Tyler Algier's numbers from this last week. I'm just curious what his snap share actually was.
And Braylon Allen's a better running back than Algier. In my opinion, he's a better running back.
So there we go. Only 21% snap share, but he did get 9 carries for 53 yards and a catch for 12. So they're still mixing Algier in, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you that Braylon Allen's a better.
Yeah.
Braylon Allen's a better running back than Algier, if I were to draft them right now. So, all right. And then finally, we're going to go back to Houston for our last buy at running back. And that is a man who's back on the map, Cam Akers. And what are your thoughts? We had the Joe Mixon injury. You might have a little better intel than most being in Houston, Matt. What have you been hearing about from Mixon's injury, and then your thoughts on Cam Akers?
All right, so it's not 100%, but Mixon may not play this week. He may not.
They actually just came out on Sleeper, Matt. Sorry to interrupt you, but it just posted on Sleeper that Mixon and Pierce are not practicing today.
Yeah. So I was going to say Mixon is probably not going to play this week, which opens the door for Akers. And I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. You know who I'm talking about. It starts with an O. So,
Dario Bongamole.
There you go. There you go. That being said, that's why I would like to have shares from him. That's it. That's solely it. That, and there's a lot of trade talk potentially of Dameon Pierce being moved. So, and if that's the case, I'd like to have the backup there based on the volume that I've seen go to the running back court.
Yeah, based on what I saw from preseason with Akers, I was buying into him. Like I was trying to pick him up wherever I could for free. Because I just see Cam Akers' build and everything, he's more of a complete back than Dameon Pierce is. Dameon Pierce is a type, he's built like a satellite back. He should be a third down back. He can succeed in that role in the NFL, more so than what the Texans were trying to do with him a couple of years ago when he did have some nice weeks for sure. But Cam Akers is definitely built more to handle the every down load, and he can do that for a week or two to replace Mixon. So yes, go out and grab Akers off of waivers for sure, because it like Matt said, it's looking like Mixon might not play this week. And so you've got a matchup for the Texans with who are the Texans playing this week? They're at Minnesota. That's right.
There you go.
So Jordan Mason just ran for 100 yards on them. I mean, it's definitely a team with the explosiveness that the Texans have offensively, that it should open some lanes up for Akers if he gets the opportunity. And it could be a huge opportunity because Dare Obamale is a third down back. He is a pass catching back. He's not somebody who's going to tote the rock every down. So look for Akers to get plenty of opportunity this week. Should get the goal line carries inside the 5. And so, yeah, definitely go out and look for him on your waivers. And finally, we're going to go over to the tight end position with one little pickup for you guys out there, and that would be Brenton Strange. That's him. There we go. And what are your thoughts on Mr. Strange here, Matt?
Okay. So look, first let me start this off with all of my buy low and hold tight ends are anybody that you would have drafted in the first 7 rounds. Okay? All of them. Please, God, hold on to them. I'm telling you, these offenses have been looking at zones at a high percentage, which does affect your tight ends big time, especially when they're gearing to take out some of the top target getters, like a Kelsey, like a Laporta, like a Kincaid. So you need to hold them and just be patient. And if you're able to, maybe you're getting one of them on the cheap, especially if you're a dynasty owner. Maybe you can get Laporta or Kincaid really cheap right now. Okay. That being said, if you're looking to add something to more of a deeper league, or as someone who might be a home run for you later in the season, or maybe you just need a win this week, it's Brenton Strange. Look, Evan Ingram is not leaning towards playing this week. He is an older asset to own in dynasty land, especially as it applies to tight ends. This could be the guy that replaces him. He looked great with increased snap share and no Evan Ingram there. 6 targets, 3 catches, 65 yards. You got to like that, especially if you're in a premium league where you're getting a half point or a full point more per reception. You got to like that. With a struggling offense, this is a bright spot that came out of last week. There is an answer at tight end, and it's Brenton Strange.
Yeah, I mean, 10.5 points at tight end, that probably got him a tight end 1 week, the way the tight ends have been this year.
Yeah.
So definitely with Trevor Lawrence's history of checking down, throwing to the tight end. I mean, we all know Evan Ingram got a zillion targets last season. So
Yep.
I think that you're right here in that Brenton Strange could be a real savvy pickup here for you to plug into your lineup. If you've got a tight end that's injured, like you had Ferguson or Njoku, he's a perfect guy to pick up. Definitely Ingram. Also, like you said, he's trending towards not playing this week with the hamstring injury. So, I mean, go ahead and get him. He's worth the flyer. He could do much worse at tight end so far. And so that's our last one that we've got. But before we go, I just wanted to touch on a couple of teams and their situations. So let me bring up a gentleman who had a rough week, and just our thoughts. Last Thursday we went into the game and it was looking like a big Bills-Dolphins game, but just turned into a steamroll for the Bills. And that'd be the injury to Tua. And now what that means for the Dolphins offense going forward. I mean, is it time to panic on Tyreek or Jalen Waddle? I wouldn't panic on them now, and this is why I waited to have the show, because we weren't definitive on Tua. Friday morning last week, everybody wanted to just write off Tua and say he was retiring, right? But I was telling people, I was like, look, he's got to talk it over with his family. He had this discussion last year, the year before, with the concussions, and we all feel for the guy. I lived through seeing Steve Young get hammered to the ground, Troy Aikman getting hammered to the ground. So it's really just the unfortunate part about football is concussions. And so I don't know, I guess what are your thoughts on what you're doing with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle right now, Matt? If you're a contender, what are you doing with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle?
It's tough. It's really tough. I mean, I'd have to say, based on what's invested in them, you're probably not moving them. You can't. You almost have to ride this out. I know it looks like Skylar Thompson's going to be the quarterback under center this week. The Dolphins did go out and sign former Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley, who probably
former Pro Bowler.
Yes, former Pro Bowler. Once you make it, you get that title. So that being said,
how about Jalen Waddle for George Pickens straight up?
I'm holding Waddle.
How about Tyreek Hill for Mike Evans in a second?
What year?
25. Early
2025, second. For Mike Evans and early 25 for Tyreek. No.
Okay. Let's up it from Mike Evans. We'll go up to let's get into a better range here. How about Tyreek for Tank Dell in a second?
No, because see, you're getting Tank at a discount right now anyway. Yeah, no.
You're keeping Tyreek?
Yeah, I am. Now,
okay,
look,
that's the ultimate test for you.
He's going to find a way to get the ball in that dude's hands. Doesn't matter who's under center. Last week caught them off guard. They got their butts kicked from start to finish, and things will be different this week. I'm not saying it's going to be the Waddle and Tyreek Hill that we were projecting for this year with Thompson under center, but I'd much rather have Tyreek than the offers that he threw out there. So that's just me. I could be wrong. But if Tua doesn't plan to retire and he seeks a specialist and he plays again this year, I'd much rather have Tyreek down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what going back to the beginning of the show, don't panic sell, relax. It's only week 2. Even if you started out 0-2 or 0-4, if you play a median game, there's still a lot of time left. And even with Tyreek not having Tua, he's still going to be the number 1 target. I mean, Skylar Thompson is going to still throw the ball, and obviously they're still going to be trying to get the ball to Tyreek. So you can look for Mike McDaniels to try and get the ball to him creatively. It might be in an end around. It might be, just on more screen passes. And Tyreek, obviously, we all know he just needs a little bit of space and he's gone. And so, yes, he may have less targets downfield, but he's still going to produce. I wouldn't put him at wide receiver 1 anymore, but he's still hovering around, I don't know, in the wide receiver 10 to 15 range at least. And so I think that Tyreek, yes, you just got to hang on to him. Waddle, on the other hand, he's going to probably struggle a little more in these next few weeks, but still.
Let me ask you this, Chris. How about this? If you're setting your lineup and you had to fill this spot with one guy, who would you rather see in there, Tyreek Hill or Jamar Chase?
Oh, right now, Jamar Chase.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, going into week 3, for sure.
Okay.
Well, they're playing the Commanders.
Yeah, that's fine. It's still September.
Oh yeah, I understand, but I mean, I don't know how many times the Bengals have gone 0-3 to start the season.
Yeah, but I
So
don't know if it's Jamar Chase that gets them there.
yeah, I would start Chase this week if I had to.
Okay.
I would plug Chase in there.
Chase over Hill.
He's still banged up. Don't know if he'll be playing this week or not yet. Yeah, I got to lean Chase there for sure.
Okay.
That would be my call. All right. One other team that has been injury riddled, and that would be the LA Rams. And last week, Cooper Kupp was just the fantasy darling. Everybody who grabbed him in the third or late second of their redrafts, or maybe traded for him in the offseason on the low, they were just riding high. They figured they had the wide receiver one. Once again, it was old Cooper Kupp back from 2020 and 2021. But now, not so much. It's a high ankle sprain. It's listed as doubtful right now. They did come out yesterday and say that he will not be going on IR. So unlike Puka, who did have to go on to IR, Cooper Kupp will be back in 2 to 3 weeks likely. But what is this? I mean, their offensive line has been terrible. What does this tell you about the Rams and maybe who you might go out and acquire in the Rams wide receiver room? What do you think, Matt, there?
And nobody. There's nobody in LA that I'm trying to go get.
Not even DeMarcus Robinson?
DeMarcus Robinson's probably owned after the Puka injury going into week 2.
Well, sure. I'm not saying picking up off of waivers anymore.
If I'm going to own a receiver, it's him or Parkinson is who I would want. I just feel like the others aren't as reliable. I know the tight end is a reliable target grabber. And I mean, I know there was it's that young kid. There's Jordan Whittington. There's some guys there, but DeMarcus Robinson and I guess Parkinson would be the two that I would go after. If I'm looking to replace Cooper Kupp, I can tell you what I did where I'm trying to replace him. I lost Pacheco and Kupp in the same week there. Should probably hammer out both of these in the same. Not looking to replace Pacheco with a KC running back, and I'm not looking to replace Kupp with an LA receiver. Where I lost Kupp, I went and picked up Jalen Naylor as kind of a sneaky grab to try and get through these couple of weeks with. And then with Pacheco, I'm plugging in Jaleel McLaughlin with matchup hopes that, his snap share increases along with targets. So as they try to get Bo Nix more confident and better numbers, I would imagine more dumps, shorter routes, easier passes to complete. So.
Yeah, I think if you had Kupp in best ball, it kind of depends on your format. I mean, in a shallower league, yeah, the Rams wide receiver room isn't going to necessarily be that helpful. But where you have a chance to exploit this injury-riddled wide receiver room is in best ball. Kind of like the Chiefs backfield, I'd like to have just one dart throw and hope that it ends up being the right one in best ball. Like even Tutu Atwell might be the guy who gets 7 or 8 targets this week. I don't know. I don't know
what's available in 98% of leagues, I'm sure. So
absolutely. So go ahead and just get a dart throw there, because for us armchair quarterbacks to try and predict what these guys are running in practice right now is really impossible. The guys that they have are NFL talents. They could decide one way or the other, depending on the defense that they're going against as well, which matchup is best to exploit. And so that's where again, we don't know if it's going to be Tutu Atwell or Jordan Whittington or Tyler Johnson there with the Rams that will step up as the second wide receiver. We're just assuming Demarcus Robinson is the one right now. And then with the Kansas City backfield, I mean,
I think that's going to be an RBC big time. I think you're going to see it kind of go, situationally. You'll see some Samaje Perine. You're going to see some Carson Steele. And depending on how long the injury lasts, maybe you're going to see some Kareem Hunt thrown in there. So,
yeah, I mean, if I had to throw a dart on one, it would be Perine, just because he was very efficient last year, even playing with the Broncos. And he sort of fits the Jerick McKinnon role the best, I guess.
He's a good pass protector. Good pass protector, good pass catcher, kind of fits their system, and he's a veteran who's trustworthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let me bring up Perine's numbers so far, which haven't been all that great. But yeah, look at that. I mean, just 3 targets so far. But if we go back to last season, we can see somewhat of what we might be able to expect from him, in Kansas City. Now, obviously, the key there is it's Kansas City, not Denver. So you could expect some touches possibly inside the 10-yard line. And that's where it gets tricky, and where I'm saying just throw one dart on one of these 3 guys, because honestly, it could be any of the 3 in Steele, Perine, or Hunt that gets the goal line work. But Andy Reid has shown that he likes to stick to one guy kind of thing with McKinnon. I mean, last year, until McKinnon got injured, 2 years ago, he was splitting Pacheco and McKinnon was the one getting the ball inside the 10-yard line, or at least he was getting the snaps inside there. Last year, Pacheco started taking over that role slowly and on into this season. But he's not going to be there now for a while. Who knows? They're saying 6 to 8 weeks, but possibly not even any more this season. It's kind of tough to, it just depends on how his fibula heals. And that's
right.
That can be perfectly predicted. So I don't know. Any other interesting situations out there, Matt, that you can see that we might want to exploit before we let everybody go? I don't know. I think that's what I've got so far.
No, man, I think we covered quite a bit there. Maybe you're trying to exploit a quarterback situation with somebody who's in dire need of a quarterback. Look to exploit that. If you've got 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks in a 2 quarterback super flex league, you might want to flex those muscles now, because we're seeing some quarterback changes, some injuries, all that kind of stuff. Now might be the time to flex those quarterback muscles.
Yeah, this would be the time to look at exactly what you just mentioned, the quarterback injuries. We all remember what happened last year and all those quarterback injuries. So if you've got a dynasty team or even a redraft team that's got a deep roster, just start. If you've got an IR spot that you can fill with somebody who's out, put them on there, and before the games, just pick up any random quarterback. I mean, in one league last year, that's how I ended up with Easton Stick. Somebody on my team was hurt, plugged him into the IR. At the time, Justin Herbert had no injury whatsoever, but Easton Stick was available, one of the only backups available in that league because it was pretty deep. But I picked him up, and Herbert got hurt that week, and boom, I was able to start Easton Stick the whole rest of the season. It wasn't awesome, but I did have him in my lineup in a championship for a Super Bowl, for crying out loud. So you can go down the list. I mean, Easton Stick, Jake Browning, Joe Flacco. Look at all the guys that showed up last season that were absolute zeros in week 1 or week 2. All of those guys ended up being meaningful, and the quarterback position, especially in the super flex and 2 quarterback leagues, is king. And so if you have the roster space, clear off the clutter, the wide receivers that you will not ever start, the backup tight ends that you've got that are just garbage. Get those guys off your roster, and I'm telling you, just pick up any random backup quarterback, Cooper Rush, Mitch Trubisky, any of those guys. I'm telling you, their potential is there. All right. I mean, look at Skylar Thompson this week. Some people are going to have to start Skylar Thompson, or they're trading future draft capital to you for him if you happen to have him. So,
yeah,
that's my last thought. All right. With that, I think we're going to head out for today. Good luck this NFL week 3. Never stop working.